It's time to make some noise. Welcome to Sound Off Sports. On today's show, we're breaking down all those NFL rule changes. Yes, a lot to get through. Plus, all the stuff happening in LA with Shohei Ohtani and his interpreter. And a little later on, the legend. Yes, UNLV former coach. And, just a legend in March Madness history. The great Lon Kruger joins the show. But first, we got to break down those rule changes. We want to hear from you. SOS starts right now.
Make some noise. This is Sound Off Sports.
Welcome, everybody, to Sound Off Sports. I'm your host, Mike Davis, joined by Big Dog James Edward Barrickman IV, my producer. Guys, a lot going on in the NFL. Yes, big-time rule changes that we got to break down. Before we hear from you and your thoughts, let's break down what actually happened at these owner meetings. So two big changes. Let's first start with this thing called the hip drop tackle. It's basically like every other tackle you see on NFL Sunday, but this is what it says now in the rule book. It's a foul if a player uses this technique to bring a player to the ground. A, grabs a runner with both hands or wraps the runner with both arms. B, unweights himself by swiveling and dropping his hips and or lower body, landing on and trapping the runner's leg at or below the knee. So this is becoming an issue and a trend in the NFL where it's becoming increasingly more difficult for defensive players to do their job. You know, you want to basically be an offensive player at this time. If you're a youngster playing Pop Warner, don't even focus on becoming a defensive player because it's just a hard job to have now. So that's the number one thing. I don't love it. Number two, the next rule change is the NFL kickoff is going to have a drastic change. Last season, we saw 22% of all kicks were returned, which was a historic low. Most of the time you're watching NFL football, it's a touchback or it's just the kick's actually going out the back of the end zone. So now this is going to be something more like what the XFL is doing. It's reducing the speed in which the kickoff team and those special teams players are going to be trying to track down the return team. So now they're going to be actually lining up on the return team's side of the ball on the 40. It's going to limit that kind of speed and impact and make things safer, but it's also going to behoove the kicking and return team to actually bring it out because there's actually going to be incentive to maybe trap that team in the 10-15 yard line or actually get a little bit of return going. It's a bad thing we've been seeing because when I grew up, we saw guys like Devin Hester, Dante Hall. They made their money, they made their bucks with the return game, and the past few seasons we haven't seen anything reminiscent of a return game. So James, those are the two big rule changes we've seen. What are the people at home saying about these big changes?
So this first one's in reference to that kickoff rule. I'm not even going to try to pronounce their last name. This is Pulis on Facebook. They say they want more scoring so there is more action for prop bets.
Okay, yeah, we're going to be getting into, betting and what that's doing in the sports universe as a whole. But yes, they do want more action. I think this, from a kickoff standpoint, is a great rule change because it's going to make more returns happen at a safer level. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a happy medium there achieved for all parties. This hip drop tackle rule, though, at a certain point, how can defenses even play football anymore? Are we just, people on social are like, are we just getting to basically flag football at this point? I'm sure people are definitely pent up, James.
Oh, absolutely. This is from @thetruthth1939 via X. He says it's all about gambling and fantasy football. You think the NFL pays Mahomes $500 million on beer and ticket sales? You think the Raiders are in Vegas to keep the integrity of the game?
See, we're seeing a trend with gambling, fantasy sports, all that kind of stuff. But yes, I just think at a certain point, how much more can we keep moving the needle and changing what the rules and regulations of football, what the standard practices are, and James, you always make a great point in the back office. Like at a certain point, we got to think, is it actually unnatural for these players to have to limit themselves in terms of what is a natural football move? Is it actually more dangerous for them in the moment to not be able to do some of these traditional things that we're accustomed to?
Yeah, and I think what @thetruthth1939 is saying is that it's a move all about money, and I guess when you break it down, it really is about the money. Of course, the NFL cares about their players, or we hope they care about their players and their well-being. But if their best players aren't on the field, it creates a bad product. If it's a bad product, it is less people watch it on TV, and if less people watch it on TV, that's bad for the NFL's pocketbook. So, I mean, I get it, but at what point are we just going to acknowledge that there is an inherent danger in playing football? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. But listen, everything in the world is about money. I just think we got to make sure the product stands true to what NFL football is all about and why we fell in love with the sport to begin with. It's a long, far cry from when Brian Dawkins used to be, crushing players out on that green field. All right, so guys, now it's time for Sink or Swim. I'm going to be talking about what's going on in this world of gambling and how it's impacting sports. You know, March isn't just known for March Madness. It's also known as Problem Gambling Awareness Month. Yeah, we know it. There's always a national day or a month for everything nowadays, but problem gambling is an issue. I mean, how many times are we watching sports where we're seeing FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, Caesars, ESPN Bet? It's all over. And this past week, there's been a lot of stuff going on in this world of gambling and how it's impacting sports. Okay, first of all, we have everything going on with Shohei Ohtani. We're going to be talking about that with his interpreter actually spending $4.5 million on gambling. Both parties say they never gambled on baseball, but we all know that temptation when you get in a hole and you're losing some bets. What's the first thing you think to do? I want to make back this money. What's the easiest way they can make back money? Is probably by gambling on a sport that they're a part of and know the inner workings of. We also saw Reese Davis on ESPN just, casually throw out there. I'm a big Reese Davis fan, but he also made a little mention during March Madness coverage in an ESPN Bet segment. He basically said it's a risk-free investment to gamble on UConn beating Northwestern. I mean, not a great thing to say on television. And then we also saw, look at this, in the NBA, Toronto Raptors player Michael Porter's brother, Jonte Porter, there's a lot of questionable things going on with him and prop bets on DraftKings. There's been an uptick in interest in his actual gameplay. There's an investigation going on right now because a lot of people were looking into the irregularities of some of his under and overs when it comes to assists, points, three-point shots made, rebounds, all that kind of stuff. So I think what we're seeing here is the temptation and how intertwined gambling is becoming a part of the sports ecosystem from a fan standpoint is going to ultimately impact the difference makers in the sport. This is not going to be, the only time we see a Calvin Ridley, a Tim Donaghy of the NBA referee back in the day. We're going to keep seeing more and more of these figures impacting the integrity of the sport, and I don't love it one bit, but that's me for my soapbox for Sink or Swim this week. A lot of crazy stuff going on. Who knows how that's going to shape the future of sports. Guys, coming up after a short break, I have one guy who I know is one of the most, put it this way, South Park would say he's got integrity, okay? Lon Kruger, we got him coming up next to talk about March Madness. You want to stick around. Welcome back to SOS. Well, it's the best time of year. Yes, it's March Madness time, and there's no better guy to have on the show right now than the great Lon Kruger. Lon, thanks so much for being here. I mean, listen, from beyond just the coaching stuff, as a player, you were such a stud as a point guard at Kansas State. You even had tryouts with the Cowboys, some Cardinals stuff in the minor leagues, but you were a two-time Big 8 Player of the Year. You took that team to a great lengths, but from transitioning from a player to a coach, you've done so much as a coach. You were the first coach to ever bring 5 separate programs to March Madness, the NCAA tournament. 21 of those tournaments, right? What did you learn about going to the tournament each time around?
Well, most importantly, you have to have really good players. And there's no question about that. And good players allow you to advance in the tournament. And we were very fortunate. We had terrific assistant coaches. We had great players. Had a lot of fun. Enjoyed getting up every day and doing what you love to do, so you can't beat that.
And, I mean, when you think about all those teams, I mean, we think to the Oklahoma team that you took to the Final Four. We think about Florida team you took to the Final Four. You had success bringing UNLV back to the Sweet 16, first time since Tark. So you had a lot of different success at many different programs. What was the common thread that you found amongst all those teams? Is it tight close-knitness? What is it? What is that common thread?
Yeah, that culture is always important. Having guys that enjoying being around each other, they enjoy getting to practice early, staying late. I think if you're doing those things, then you're doing something right with the culture part of it. And then, of course, we go to the Final Four because of Buddy Hield. We went to the Final Four in Florida because we had 5 really good, players that were veteran guys. And, again, just guys that enjoy competing and understand and appreciate the responsibility that each has and how it relates to one another. And everyone take care of their own responsibility and trust others to do that, and good things generally happen.
And when you're watching the tournament now, before we get to Kevin, everything going on in the NIT with UNLV, when you're watching the tournament now and you see teams like Kentucky with Coach Cal, right, and the youngsters and having so many young guys on a team, that presents certain challenges. Then you see Matt Painter and Purdue, and yes, they floundered a few times in the tournament, but that builds up, a certain, to me, I would think that experience builds up a lot of good trust and faith amongst the team. So what are those challenges you're seeing as we're seeing a lot more one and done kind of things, and how certain programs cultivate talent more through juniors and seniors?
Yeah, the college game has changed a lot in the last decade, last 3 or 4 years with the portal, the NIL, and everything that goes on. A lot of times with those young 18, 19-year-old freshmen, they're competing against 23, 24, 25-year-olds. That's a big difference. The young guy may be talented, but having that maturity and strength makes a lot of difference. The game's become so physical, and you got to be able to withstand that over the course of a season. And again, there's a lot of different ways to get there, but you like having that experience and maturity as well.
Okay, so now when it comes to Kevin, your son, watching him, everything, all the great stuff he's done with the Runnin' Rebels right now, obviously they're having much success right now in the NIT. I assume, there's a certain pressure when you're a coach and a player, but when you're watching your son, what is that like? It must be very nerve-wracking, I would assume.
No question. It's a lot easier doing it from the sideline than from the stands. It's for everyone. You want to see your children, your kids, have success. You want to see them enjoy what they're doing. And fortunately, with Kevin, he loves what he's doing. He loves being in Vegas. And from a coaching and a dad's perspective, to see them make the progress they have each year and throughout the season, see how hard his guys play every night, and see that they're having a great time and they really enjoy each other. And he's got a culture that you like seeing from not only a coaching standpoint, but from a parent standpoint. Kids enjoy going to practice. They enjoy competing for each other, and they're really playing their best basketball here in the last month, 6 weeks of the year.
Certainly, and it's so exciting to watch DJ Thomas. He's what a stud. Had a great last game, no turnovers, 17 points. But from an insider's perspective, can you express to our audience what it feels like when you're maybe not playing in the NCAA tourney, but when you're playing in the NIT? What does that feel like for an organization?
Yeah, well, it's great tournament experience. You lose and you're done. And that's something this group of players is really benefiting from. You had a good win over Princeton early on, then come home, and a really, really fantastic crowd, in the game against Boston College. You feel the energy in the building and kind of a little bit of a start to getting it back to where you want it to be.
But you're also a leader when it comes to, in our community. And you used to, and still to this day, you drive a lot of cancer patients around in your free time to their appointments, and you help out on that front. But there's also a Coaches vs. Cancer Golf Classic coming up. So tell us a little bit about that and how we can be involved.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to do that. Everyone's been touched by cancer. And we've got a Road to Recovery program nationwide under the American Cancer Society where volunteers drive cancer patients to and from their chemo treatments or radiation treatments. And the number one reason for people missing treatments is the lack of transportation. And then the Coaches vs. Cancer event, we're doing the 17th year here in Vegas, and anyone can get involved. Everyone's been touched by cancer, but anyone can get involved and advocate for others to get involved in the fight against this terrible disease. We certainly appreciate that.
Well, great man on and off the court, great leader. Thanks so
Mike.
much.
Appreciate it.
We have a great opportunity always to have Coach Lon Kruger in studio. We appreciate it. Guys, coming up after a short break, we got more SOS for you. Stick around. Welcome back to SOS. All right, so everybody's talking about what's going down in LA with Shohei Ohtani and his interpreter who was just fired. A lot of fanfare going on around this. I mean, it's kind of sad for Dodger fans because, I mean, this team was looking incredible, right? You got Shohei, you got Freddie Freeman, you got Mookie Betts, you got so much excitement surrounding this team, the new Japanese pitcher. So a lot of great stuff going on, but now there's this whole issue, this whole controversy surrounding what's going on with these gambling debts amounting to $4.5 million from Shohei Ohtani's interpreter, now former interpreter, Ipei Misuhara. James, first of all, before we hear from the fans and everybody that's responding to this, what's your take on this? Do you think Shohei knew about this?
I want to hope that he didn't know about this. Obviously, I don't know. From what I've heard, it sounds like Shohei Ohtani is telling us the truth, but again, I wasn't in the room. I don't know.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think it would be rare for this guy to be such a good friend, to be an acquaintance, to be somebody who actually sits Shohei down and explains to him what's going on. It's a big likelihood that he knew a little bit about it at the beginning, and just like we know in this space and world of gambling, it just becomes a snowball effect, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and maybe he was out of the loop with that. But let's hear what the people at home have to say.
This first one is from @NevadaUte via X. He says, depends on how involved he truly was. It definitely isn't looking good. Again, this is in terms of whether or not this will be a distraction to their World Series hopes.
Yeah, this is going to be a distraction. This is going to be a big issue for this franchise. And if I was a Dodger fan, I'd be concerned. I would be buying low on Shohei for fantasy purposes, betting purposes, all that kind of stuff. What else do we hear?
This is from @RayManette Sr. on Facebook. He says, who gives an acquaintance access to millions of dollars? I think some people don't do that for their own partners in life.
Well, I mean, listen, I think Colin Cowherd had a great point on this. Young superstars who, this guy's just signed a 10-year, $700 million deal. He's a two-time former AL MVP. This is a guy who he's worked up in being the best athlete he can be. Most people are not, also their own accountant and understanding what's going on with their 401k and finances. A lot of people have people for those types of things, especially if you're making that kind of money. So it's not puzzling to me that he wouldn't be aware of every little finite detail. But I think the issue here is, once again, what we were talking about, our sink or swim, is that, this is a player who now has a close confidant where he's involved in his money being used for gambling. And if he's trying to recover that, where can he actually have the most impact to recover and recoup that money? It's by betting on himself and in baseball. So it's an issue, and it's reminiscent of what our next guy is going to talk about with a guy named Pete Rose.
This is from Devin Zadara on Facebook. He says, too bad Pete Rose didn't have an interpreter.
Exactly. I mean, great comment there. But yes, I mean, look what's happening. History repeats itself. Nothing really changes. The big thing that's changing is the fact that we're just allowing gambling to be a fixture in the sports world. And it's seeping its way into the players' lives more and more, and it's a huge problem. James, I know you're our resident, gambler here on this show, because I don't really partake. But I mean, how do you feel about this? As a fan, it's one thing, but the way it's impacting the world of sports, I don't like it.
I think there needs to be a way for these sports leagues to monitor what their players are gambling on. Obviously, you don't want any player betting on any game in the league that they're playing in, because there's just a conflict of interest. You know what I mean? They know a lot about what's going on. All these players are tight with each other. You don't want somebody on the Dodgers betting on a Pirates game. You know what I mean? There's a lot of potential issues and conflicts that could come from players betting on their own sport.
The best thing to come from this is understanding, yes, sure, Shohei Ohtani has an interpreter, but every professional athlete has an entourage. It's like, that old HBO show. All these guys they're like the CEO of their own business. It's not like they're just playing for the Dodgers. Shohei Ohtani is a business. Each and every player, with the amount of money they're making, is an organization unto themselves. So now what's happening is it's not just like Shohei gambling the money. It's the person that's a part of Shohei's organization gambling that money. And it's just becoming more and more, and we're seeing it increasingly each and every week. What about the Jaguars employee, the front office executive who is gambling on stuff, who is trying to recoup money and kept using finances from the Jaguars system? So, I mean, it's just crazy what's happening. I don't have the answer of how we're going to solve this, but I'm not a fan, and I definitely think we're going to see a lot more stories in the news that are Calvin Ridley, Shohei Ohtani's interpreter-esque in the near future. It's just how it is.
There is a contingent of people out there who think that Shohei Ohtani might not be telling the truth and that maybe his interpreter is the fall guy.
Oh,
so
I like that.
To these previous comments that we've taken where they're asking, how does an acquaintance have that kind of access to your bank account? A CBS reporter, his name is RJ Anderson.
Okay.
Did an article. He cited the word of two former interpreters, Daniel Kim and Katsunori Kojima. These people were interpreters for leagues back in the day.
Yeah.
They said they assist players in every aspect of their life, and that includes opening bank accounts. So they do have that kind of access, and we can conclude that Ohtani's interpreter, who had been with him since the start of his MLB career, had become a very trusted person in his life. So, in my opinion, based on the experience of others, I think Shohei might be telling the truth here.
You know what? I wouldn't put it past anybody to see either way of this story. Either side, I could see both things happening, and I think a lot gets lost in translation. See what I did there, James?
I did. That was pretty good.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, coming up after a short break, we got more SOS for you. Stick around. You don't want to miss it. All right, welcome back. So, guys, you are the people that make this show go. You are the engine. We want to hear from you, whether it's a voicemail, whether it's a comment on social media or an email. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your thoughts on Sound Off Sports. The best way to do that is email us at soundoff@kvvu.com or call us at 702-855-3502. That's the best way to get in touch with us. We can't wait to hear your thoughts on all the sports topics going around the globe. We'll see you next time on SOS.